long road, there's no turning back. It's a long road, there's no turning back.
Hello, my darling. This is in reply to your tape that you sent to me.
The metacognitive dramaturgy that centers audience engagement in Darling. The contents of a manila envelope, a playwright's fever dream, or an invitation to ethical misfortune. In 2019, Jenn Addesso, a high school teacher, playwright, and performer, made a surprising and shocking discovery within her parents' basement in preparation for renovation. While clearing out an old filing cabinet, which originated from a school board surplus sale in Cambridge, Ontario, Canada, she found a kind of archive that contained the very personal, problematic revelations of a stranger. After some time of struggling with this discovery on her own, and whether or not she should write about it, she eventually reached out to Brooke Barnes, Joanna Cleary, and me to share her findings. We all agreed that Jenn's discovery deserved our time, energy, and imaginations, and how we could explore its meaning through a performance with the WOOMcollaborative. This is a bold choice because it implicated Jenn and us in a decision to share and thereby reveal publicly the contents of what was found. It's important to note here that the contents of these discovered materials do not reveal the original owner's identity. We only know her as Darling. Overall, our discomfort with the potentially unethical dimension of our decision became a kind of guiding energy in how we thought about our work. So in the way we constructed our performance, we wanted our audience to be thinking about the ethical nature of what they were actively bringing to life in their thoughts and their actions to reveal Darling. This seemed to us like a form of metacognitive dramaturgy. That is a way of inviting our audience into a process of thinking and enacting our thoughts about the problematic relationship we all had to the content of the project. In the following presentation, we will elaborate on Jenn's discovery, its significance to us, and how we created a performance that facilitated our audience's immersion into our thinking about Darling. We will also address COVID-19 related challenges to actualizing this story, which would have been impossible without the support of publicly funded institutions such as the University of Waterloo, the Waterloo Regional Library, and the Waterloo Regional Arts Fund.
After 3 years of prolonged development due to the challenges of COVID-19 lockdowns and social distancing, in 2022, the WOOMcollaborative presented Darling. The synopsis of the work is as follows: a one-woman performance following grad student Erin Ziegler as she discovers an anonymous woman's secret hidden away since 1976 in a filing cabinet. A manila envelope containing 3 cassette tapes and 1 journal unraveled the entirety of Ziegler's thesis right before her panel dissertation. The story of a woman and her gynecologist lover leaves Erin with a burning question she cannot get out of her mind, even in her dreams. Who is Darling? Why would she leave behind such personal material for someone else to find? Was this a careless mistake, or perhaps a subconscious act of sharing? We had plenty of questions about this archive, including Jenn's fate in finding it, but our most pressing question was, should we make a performance from it? We agreed that we should try. The owner and voice within the 3 cassette tapes is Darling's lover and is known only by his first name, George. Darling, the owner of the journal where she is prompted by a therapist, who we know only as Peter, to write accounts of her feelings and her day, is an otherwise anonymous endearment spoken only by George on the tapes. We hope this anonymity would allow us to share our impressions of this archive and why something from 1976 seems significant to us today.
Our process of devising this performance took over 2 years, in part due to the pandemic and in part due to the many different ways that we explored in our approach to representing Darling and our relationship to her archive. A recurring impression in our work was that of an archive fever dream. In this, we're borrowing the phrase archive fever from literary theorist Jacques Derrida, who wrote an essay in 1994 entitled The Concept of the Archive, a Freudian Impression. In part, Derrida's focus is on the structure of the archive, who creates it, orders it, and governs its access to the public. Basically, who controls its contents. But he was also interested in how the different forms of storage and dissemination change our understanding, literally, our public memory of the past. Derrida returns at length to the writings of Sigmund Freud in order to analyze the connection between archives and the structures of human memory. He offers an etymological study of the concept of the archive, tracing this concept to the Greek word arche, which he explains means both commencement and commandment. He sees this etymology as important because it binds the archive historically to government, power, and law. And by this, Derrida is essentially saying, man. Given this house arrest of the archive, we wondered, what happens if it's released from its confines? In the case of Darling's manila envelope, what happens when it ends up in the hands of theater makers? Well, we discovered that the text of this diary and the words of these tapes become something that we can embody, something that we can feel and think about through performance. We found ourselves trying to engage in the messy and complicated process of securing Darling's thoughts and George's words in a ritual repetition of a dissertation examination, or more accurately, a fevered dream of a dissertation exam.
Up next is Erin Ziegler, presenting her master's thesis.
I want you to use the stage whenever you feel uptight or depressed.
Stop!
Because it will help you to relax. It will help you to feel so still.
Hi,
Help you to know
my name is Erin Ziegler and I will be presenting my thesis today.
I will be there.
Adherence to societal norms guarantees lifelong happiness.
The idea of creating a graduate student defending her dissertation on marriage and family norms came in part from working in the Theatre of the Arts, a space on the University Waterloo campus that can easily feel like a lecture hall. We wondered, what exactly does it mean to be examined in a dissertation defense? In particular, what does it feel like to be the subject of examination? In a sense, we were trying to put ourselves in the place of the contents of the manila envelope, to put ourselves under scrutiny as a means of scrutinizing Darling. With the inspired contributions of our designers, Gary Kirkham, Colin Labadie, and Chelsea Van Overbeek, we were able to flesh out the bones of Darling's archive into a sort of submedial dreamscape, where sound, visuals, and light reveal a subconsciousness in Darling's archive. Another focus of our work was to inspire questions about relationships and desire, and whether it is possible to be completely satisfied with the path one's life has taken. Incorporating input from the audience using an interactive teaching technology in this process. Our approach to a multimedia experience of Darling's archive was that of an immersive nature. That is, the bones of her history were to be fleshed out through various forms of reenactment. And with the help of audience input, we collaboratively considered what we think we know about this woman and the life she chose to live.
Metacognitive Dramaturgy, otherwise known as how we immersed our audience in the art, or experiencing the dilemma of what to do or say about Darling. At the beginning of the performance, audience members at random were provided with manila envelopes with a date on them to take with them to their seat, and then they were given a simple instruction. When the date of your envelope is called in the performance, stand up and read the message inside. Each date indicated a journal entry from Darling, so audience members would read aloud a typed version of what their particular journal entry conveyed. Monday, September 20th, 1976. Perhaps I have a cool and distant relationship with Chris because I've always been jealous of the love and attention my parents lavish on him. What a terrible thing if it's true. Chris wasn't responsible for my parents' feelings or the fact that I resented my father. I'll never be able to make up to him for not being the warm and relaxed mother I should have been. It's too late. My parents never liked Marty, and I have a close, warm relationship with him. It is because I never felt threatened then. Here the anonymity of Darling is represented through the voices of various audience members.
11 p.m. I am like two people, a trapped, unhappy person in this house, constantly reminded of all my failures and haunted by memories of love.
We chose to reveal Darlene's story through the voices of audience members because it created a form of collaborative discovery and a form of collaborative responsibility. In giving voice to Darlene, our audience could experience the ethical weight of revealing Darlene's diary content. And in this regard, we hope that they would experience the same metacognitive process as we, the creators of this project, did. We are all now collaboratively thinking about Darlene's thoughts. In this form of metacognitive thinking about thinking, we aimed for the audience to reflect Jenn's writing and a dramaturgical process of thinking about thinking while creating this performance. In a cycle where thoughts build upon thought, our goal was to build a dramaturgical process that truly broke down what exactly was being examined in unconventional ways.
Alongside this, audience members were encouraged to keep their phones on, their notifications off, and to log into an educational software site, nearpod.com, an interactive pedagogical tool whereby they could anonymously answer prompted polled questions asked by Erin as she grapples intellectually and ethically with Darlene's archive. As the audience witnessed their responses to particular questions alongside answers from other anonymous audience members, Erin responds in real time, and thereby ponders, with the help of the audience, her thoughts about Darlene, the materials within her archive, and possible interpretations of what it all means. Examples of the poll questions used in the performance are: how many of you keep a journal or some sort of archive? And how do you archive? What do you use to collect this information? Why do you think this woman created her journal? What do you use as hiding places? How many of you are married? Or in a relationship? Or single? And would you prefer to be married, single, or in a relationship? Why do you want to be married, single, or in a relationship? We also shared a checklist that is intended to measure happiness as it relates to goals in life. Complete an education.
Check.
Get a job.
Check.
Get married.
Check.
Buy a house.
Check.
Have children.
Check.
Then retirement and death. These are the tired and true steps according to our society. One size fits all. These boxes you check will make you happy. How many boxes have you checked? Whether or not you've checked these boxes, are you happy? Would you add any other check boxes?
In our approach to dramaturgy in this performance, we wanted to center our collective discomfort with sharing Darlene's archive with the public, in facilitating our audience to give voice to the thoughts of Darlene and listen to the words of George. We wanted to pose questions about our power within a university setting to observe, scrutinize, listen, and be critical of others. Through digital projection and sound manipulation, we wanted our audience to notice the fault lines in the material that they saw and heard during the performance, and that their perception of what's real in this performance is one among many variables, which are all set in relation to one another around and through various media. Finally, we deliberately chose not to have a performer portray Darlene, as we offered the portrayal of Darlene to our audience. They were empowered to influence the way the performance happened. Our intention here was twofold. Firstly, we wanted the questions this performance asked to be experienced personally by each audience member, and as such, we hoped this experience would empower them to see themselves, both as individuals and as a collective, struggling with the same choices in life as Erin and Darlene. Secondly, We wanted to co-create and archive the world of the play with our audience members. By dramaturgically situating audience members as part of the performance's creative infrastructure, Darling ceases to be a play that exists ephemerally on stage. Rather, it becomes a series of ongoing questions that exist as long as we keep asking them of ourselves and each other.
Actualization of Darling and reciprocity between art and publicly funded institutions. Through the generosity of the University of Waterloo and the Theatre and Performance Program, we were able to bring Darling's story to the community. This performance space, particularly useful to us with the amount of seating that was available for audiences in order for it to be presented. The actualization of Darling stemmed from surprise, shock, and delight. It is through institutions that George and Darling grappled with their relationship and explored notions of desire. And thus, in our choice of location, we echoed and reflected this experience within an academic setting. This location drew us closer to these discovered materials and sharing it with the audience by attempting to replicate the very experience that we encountered when we originally combed through the layers of two individuals' lives. Thus, the impact of this performance is interwoven with the collaborative and situational input from the audience. It is of particular importance that we extend our gratitude and support from publicly funded institutions such as the University of Waterloo, the Kitchener Public Library, and our research on the history of the Waterloo region in the 1970s, which were foundational to our dramaturgical and scenographic approach to this work, as well as the Waterloo Regional Art Fund. And finally, the Canadian Foundation for Innovation. The relationship that we developed while navigating the occurrences of the COVID-19 lockdowns and social distancing were that of patience, understanding, and a drive to see the work through, no matter the amount of time things had to be put on pause. It was through this reciprocal understanding and support between the art that was developed in Darling and the imperative connection to these publicly funded institutions that Darling's story was able to be shared on this very stage that we are sharing this work virtually with you now.
For whoever comes next.
It's a long road, there's no turning back. It's a long road, there's no turning back.
Hello, my darling.